Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, your host, and what I wanted to talk about today is the strong preference that residency sites have for graduates of public colleges of pharmacy versus privates. So here are the numbers. If you go to a public college of pharmacy, you have a 7% better chance to get the interview in the first place. You have an 11% better chance to match. And then this is a number that I prefer, which is, I think, the most telling of them all. When you see the numbers for the matches, you look at the number of people that entered the match. That is, at one point they were interested in a residency, and then many of them, just dropped out because they didn't get the interview. But the percent increase or difference between public and private is almost 14% between someone who registered for the match and someone who didn't. So it's about 59% for public, 45% for private. And to some extent, I wonder if that has to do with the debt load, that at a private school you're much more likely to have a larger debt load, and maybe you would say, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to take myself out of the match. I'm just not sure. But those are the numbers. Your 7% better chance to get an interview, 11% better chance to match, and then 14% better overall, that if you started to actually end up with a residency. And let's think about why this is going to happen. So the first thing, I think, and this is kind of the one word that you want to have through your entire residency application process, which is relationships. If you are at a public college of pharmacy, that public college probably has a relationship with a hospital. And because of that relationship, that means that APPIs are going to go to those students and that they're going to have that relationship there. The other thing I see is the support that you get. So when you talk about the private school, you expect, okay, well, it's going to be smaller class size, so better relationships with the professors, and it's not publish or perish as much there. And so in general, you expect that's, the better education. You pay a little bit more for that, or a lot more. And what I see, though, is for the tasks that you need to accomplish and the things that you need to get to succeed as a residency applicant, a large public university probably has better resources, especially when you talk about the pop-up privates. And what I mean by that is that they're just a pharmacy school or just a health sciences campus, and you're not going to have things that are really important like a writing center or a career center, where you can get help with not only the CV, the resume, the letter of intent, but also maybe even some interview practice. So let's take a look at the top private schools and then the top public schools. So if you are in one of these 9 private schools, you have the best chance to get a residency percentage-wise. We're not talking about the number of people that they send. We're just talking about percentage-wise. But Union, Lipscomb, Concordia, Drake, Findlay, Wilkes, Cedarville, D'Youville, and Butler. Those 9 schools are bucking the trend. And what I would want to really know is, what is it about those schools? What are they doing differently that's allowing them to have a much better success rate? And you could argue a success rate that matches, these giant public research institutions. And as I kind of, talk to some of the students, and I have talked to students from many of these colleges, what I'm finding is that when they were looking at their APPIs, they were very relationship minded. And so when they do that, what happens is they start thinking, okay, well, where am I going to actually apply for residency? Let's see if I can make my APPIs go along with that. The other thing that they need are those letters of recommendation. So when you're talking about getting great letters of recommendation, you have to, one, get the right appy before December or January. And then you also have to have a good relationship with the person with whom you're working. And the thing about these 9 schools is if you add up all of the students that got a residency, it only adds up to about 200. Where if you look at all of the students from the publics, you're looking at about 2,000. So what I'm seeing is, and what you need to do for each of these pieces is, so for the interview, the public schools, if they have better resources with writing, then you're going to have to get more writing help. If they're going to have better relationships with a hospital, then you have to create a better relationship with a hospital. And you can do that in a couple of ways. It's not just getting the appies there, but you can get a job there. And that's kind of a big part of it. So when you look at people that are successful in getting the residency, they're applying for a hospital job. And this may be a BFO, blinding flash of the obvious, but if you're applying for a hospital job, they expect you to have experience in a hospital. And a big mistake that some of the students make is believe that appy experience is the same as work experience, and it is not. Those are different things, and you want to have both. When it comes to the actual match rate, now you're talking about relationships within that university. And so when you're on the list and getting ranked, what is it that makes it so that someone in a public school gets ranked higher on average, 11% more than someone that's at a private? And again, I think it comes down to the relationship. Does the public school have an advantage because they have this hospital nearby? And I want to say it's twofold. I think it's not only in that they get the appies there, but I think it's just a lot easier to get a job there because you're already there. Whereas at a private school that might be distant geographically from a hospital, which is a great campus and so forth, it might make it a lot harder. And then this kind of last number, which is kind of tragic, the almost 14% difference between those that register for the match and that show an interest in residency and that actually get one. I think that's going to be multifactorial, that we're going to talk about now. The cost of the private maybe makes you say, okay, I'm going to end up with many more tens of $1,000s worth of loans. I think it's going to be behoove me to take a position now rather than take that whatever it is, $50,000 a year hit that you have to with that first year. And then also to, again, kind of go back to those relationships where these 9 private schools, Union, Lipscomb, Concordia, Drake, Findlay, Wilkes, Cedarville, DeUville, and Butler, have done that. They have made it so that their students can have these relationships, not only with the institutions, but with the professors themselves. So, I go back to the courses that I have at residency.teachable.com. As far as getting the interview, one of the easiest things you can do is get professional help with the letter of intent. And then you can, sign up for the course, and then I provide that. If you want to talk about the actual interview, I have 3 hours in the Rockstar interview prep, which is basically explaining the point system and what you're shooting for and what are the things that they're going to grade you on, not only in the interview, but even to get the interview in the first place. What's the rubric look like? And then this registration thing, I think it comes down to how are you going to justify it? A residency at one place might not prompt you to take the residency, where if it was a higher tier residency, maybe you would. Okay. So again, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com if you've got questions, but especially if you're in a private school, reach out to me and kind of, hey, I go to this school, what are my chances? And I can just tell you right off the bat what they are. But if you're in those 9, you're in a much, much better position. And I think we really need to look at those and say, okay, what are they doing different?